Right?
This conference will now be recorded.
So let's recap what we have spoken, right? There are three layers of when you want talking about Snowflake architecture. There are these three layers which are very important, and one is the storage layer, compute layer, and then the cloud services layer. Okay, so we talked in detail about the cloud services layer and metadata layer, infrastructure optimizer, transaction manager, security, and all this stuff, right? So this is pretty much the core part of the architecture, and then it's also called as the global services layer. Okay, and we talked about virtual warehouses, what are single. So I have told you how to, when the moment you can log in, you have the authentication, access control, and the warehouses that you want the infrastructure manager. And whenever you run your queries, right, how the optimizer works, and then transaction manager, how if you do any transactions, how that can the transaction manager takes care of your transactions, and then security to get your privileges, access, and all this stuff. So we talked about multi-cluster warehouses where you have single cluster and multi-cluster. Okay, and then we have seen about yeah. So we have seen all the sizes of the warehouses from extra small to 4XL. And how many clusters do we have in 3x large? I want you guys to answer me, please. How many clusters do we have for a 3x large?
One, sir.
Only one cluster. Okay. So when you have multi clusters, you'll have each cluster will have separate 64 servers for it. Okay, and when you look at this particular credits, right, if a particular cluster, that is a warehouse, which runs for entire 1 hour, then you will be charged 1 credit, and per second is 0.003. If it is a small, per second 0.006. Okay, if a query runs for 10 seconds on an extra small server, then 0.003 into 10 seconds will give you the total number of credits. And then based on the edition, we'll talk about how much do they charge per edition. Okay, and then this is like a mobile phone billing, right? We talked about it. So initially, whenever the mobile phones got introduced, the first minute they will be charged. Even if you talk 30 seconds or 40 seconds, you'll be charged 1 minute, and later you'll be charged per second billing. The same thing holds good in Snowflake as well. If you look at it, 0 to 60, 0.0017, 61 seconds, the same price, and 2 minutes, 0.033, based on the virtual warehouse that you are trying to use. Okay, and so whenever you so you guys have sign up for your trial accounts.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so how many of you haven't tried your trial accounts? Guys, you have to
I
talk to
tried.
me.
I tried.
Okay, very good. See, because we are all in different parts of the world, right? I want you to be much more interactive so that I can get your pulse, whether you guys are following me or not. Okay. So whenever you're trying up, setting up your trial account, right, you have to choose your AWS region or any cloud region. Okay. So whenever, so there are some differences between each cloud region. The pricing varies by the cloud region. Okay, the pricing, the unit cost. Okay, another factor that, so whenever you the storage and compute, there are the two charges that get supplied to you whenever you are using Snowflake, and the storage is average monthly balance that you have in your account, and compute is whatever the queries that is running on a particular warehouse, what kind of warehouse you are running on. That's how your total Snowflake bill will come into picture. Okay. And then when you're trying to see, you can choose your account anywhere. And when we logged in, right, we when you try to log in, we had this account details, right? One second, let me show you. So worksheets, and this is my account. And if I go and then click on this particular thing, right, so this is the account that you are trying. So this is the account. Whenever somebody asks what is your account, this is your account. Normally in the corporate environment, when you start working, right, people have different accounts for different environments: dev account, QA or stage account, or prod account. So this is how you will have the www sorry https tps colon slash slash xyz company hyphen dev dot ap south1 dot aws dot snowflakecomputing.com. Okay, so this is how it is. And this ap south1 is the region, aws region that you have chosen, and AWS is the provider, account provider. If you sign in North America region for the AWS part, right, you won't get all this stuff. AP South One, AWS, and all this stuff. Your account will be like xyz dot snowflake computing.com. Okay, only if you sign up North America West Coast, because Snowflake is in San Mateo, California, and initially when they started this region, right, they did not think of how big they're going to grow, or I don't know what how they thought of. But whenever you sign up in North America West Coast region, like Oregon or something, then you will get a account details like this. Okay, so if you sign up with North Coast or any part of the world, right, you will have XYZ hyphen. If it's a dev environment, dev, and then if it is a stage, you will have something like stage, like this. And then if you have having a production environment, you will have like this. Okay, the production doesn't have a hyphen prod or anything. xyz.snowflakecomputing.com. So for your trial account, you'll have this account details, and then if you are signing up with a different region, you'll have the region name and the provider. If it's Microsoft, you'll have Azure. If it's Google Cloud Services, you'll have GCP, and then the snowflakecomputing.com. This is how the account is distributed across different regions. Okay, and coming to this so if you're signing up a government agency, right, you will have a different, so there are, so let me show you that. Okay, and the other part is, right, you can have your account in US, you can start working from India, you can start working from any part of the world. So my company account is in North America West Coast, and then we work daily from India and different parts of the world. We use the same account to connect. The only difference is the network latency. Okay, so if you are trying to if you are a federal agency, like a government agency, right, and there are some restrictions for the government agencies, and then AWS or Azure, they have a separate government related region. Okay, so for example, let's go into this particular Snowflake pricing part. So if you look at this particular thing, right, it will tell you how, what is the price, unit price of, unit price is nothing but the per credit charge, right? So if I choose the platform as AWS, and then region. If you look at this, right, they have regions all across all the regions of the world. Okay, and oops, somehow so APAC, and then the nearest one for India is APAC Mumbai, US East Coast, commercial, government, North Virginia. If you see this, right, this is for the government agencies, and the price is like this one. So for the pricing of the government agencies, you have to talk to them. If not, if you choose any of the other thing, right, like East Coast or West Coast, I have a hard time in my mouth with my mouse. So if you take US, where is this? Sometimes, yeah, US East Coast or West Coast, right, at Central America. If you go and look at it, right, you see $2 for the standard edition, $3 for the enterprise edition, and then business critical is for the $4. And then if you look at the on-demand storage, that means uh, if you keep on paying as and when you are trying to insert data into your tables and all this stuff, that is called the on-demand. And if you know that you already need some 50 terabytes or 40 terabytes upfront, then you can go for the capacity storage, and it's $23 per terabyte, and this $40 per terabyte. And this pricing varies by the region in which you have chosen. Okay, so for example, if say APAC Mumbai was added 2 months before that it was Singapore only, the nearest one. You see, right, $2.2, $3.3, $4.4. And the pricing, why this pricing varies, because the underlying provider, if you go and sign up with the AWS for your account, they have a different pricing for each region. So Snowflake on top of it adds its own stuff and then shows us the pricing. So the pricing of each region varies by the pricing of the underlying provider. If you go and choose your Azure, right, and these are the regions, and Azure doesn't have anything in India, and the nearest one is Singapore. And if you look at it, right, $2.5, $3.7, $5. Okay, so each cloud provider pricing varies for provider, pricing varies for what do you call the region as well. For example, if you go and then choose AWS, and then if you have chosen any East Coast or West Coast kind of thing, right, so you get 2, 3, 4. And if I go and then let me show you something how the cost gets calculated. I'm gonna run something here. Where is my, okay, I'm having hard time. Okay, so yesterday we were discussing about the Snowflake sample data. This is a benchmarking data. This is given to us by Snowflake for your data handling, running your queries of different volumes, how to test and all this stuff. This is called benchmarking database, and you see a small arrow mark here. This is a shared database. That means you can read only database. You can read from this database, but you cannot insert, update, or delete. And they have different schemas of which each of them have different sizes. I show. So the customer, if you look at the black pop-up window, it shows 150 KB, 150, 150,000 rows for this particular table. And if the same SF 10,000, if you go for the same table, you have 150 billion rows, 101 GB kind of thing. Okay, and if you go on query this, right, I'm querying this store sales table in one of the benchmarking database, and let's see how much time it takes. And we are running with which virtual warehouse we are running this particular query. Can you guys tell me with which virtual warehouse we are running this query?
Large, sir.
Can you tell me which warehouse is this?
Compute.
Which warehouse? Yeah, compute what? So can you see the name of the warehouse somewhere in the worksheet?
No.
Yeah.
Warehouse.
Right.
Compute on
So how much time it took to yeah, run this query? 10.87 seconds. Okay. Now Excel. Okay, file. So 10.87 seconds, right? And also time taken, edition, price per edition. Okay, and then um, credits per second. Total price. Okay, so if you look at this query, right, how much time it took for us? 10.87 seconds. 10.87 seconds. And what is the virtual warehouse that you have used? Warehouse, virtual warehouse. This is
large.
large. Okay, and if you go to this particular, we can get the pricing of each of them, right? Where is the pricing? Yeah. So if you look at this one, right, how much is per second pricing for large? 0.0022. Okay, so yeah, if you come here and then add 0. Price per edition, credits per second, 0.0022. Okay, and mine is a business critical edition that is signed up in what do you call, sorry, let's go the price. I have a hard time with this go to meeting controls, which you cannot see, and then I can only see. I have to drag them if I want to. They don't listen to me. Okay, there is the pricing part of it, right? Yeah, so mine is a business critical edition that I have signed up. Let's think I have signed up in North America region. This is for the North America, right? So business critical, how much is the per credit price? Cost per credit, how much is it for the business? This is the business
$4.
critical. Some, yeah, so I have signed up for business critical and the edition price cost per credit is $4. Okay, if it is APAC Mumbai, it's 4.2. If it is a enterprise edition, it's 3.2. So I have signed up for a business critical edition for a pack Mumbai. It should be 4.2. For simplicity's sake, let's take that we have signed up an account in North America and the price per credit for business critical is $4. Okay, then let's go. Edition is business critical with critical. Okay, price per edition is $4, and then total pricing is, so 0.0022 is the number of credits per second. This is the number of this multiplied with your total query execution time multiplied with your addition dollar pricing. So this is the 0.09 cents is what you have charged. Okay, so it costs you about 7.65 rupees to run this particular query. The cost that you incurred is some 7 rupees and 65 paise. And if you're talking about cents, it's dollars, $0.09 or almost 1 cent kind of thing. So you understood how things work out for the compute cost, right? Do you want me to go over it one more time? I
This
have
is
run this
fine.
query.
So
Go ahead.
I have a query here. So its price per edition is $4, right? And in the
Mhm.
Indian rupees, we need to convert to the charge, right? So we don't need to the $4.
Sorry, I lost you in the last. Can you repeat your question again?
Yeah, $4. So in the multiplication, we just added $4 in INR, right? But the
Mm-hmm.
$4 should convert into rupees, right?
Yeah, that's what. If you look at this formula, I have multiplied by 80.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I missed it.
So we ran a query which took about 10.87 seconds, and the price per edition is $4, and price per second is 0.0022 for a large warehouse. So number of seconds multiplied by credits per seconds multiplied by price will give you the total cost of the query, which is equivalent to the INR part. But this is not the exact thing, because we talked about one more thing, right? Let me go here. So do we have extra large? We don't have an example for large. So this is what it is. If your query is up and running, then you will get this particular. One second, let me show you something else. Warehouses, and this is suspended, so it's not running yet. That means the moment we ran our query, it, we wake up the system and we ran our query, and after 5 minutes it got suspended again. You can see the status of it, right? If I go and then run the query again, which is cached already, which comes to us pretty fast, 99 milliseconds. And if you go to the warehouses, right, there is a refresh button. This should, because this particular thing is running from the metadata, so it doesn't wake up. If you're trying to get the data from the cache, right, it doesn't use warehouse. If you go look at this history part of your SQL, right, this is the first time we ran the query at 7:22. Now the time is 7:30. That means 5 minutes is passed. If there is no activity on this particular warehouse for 5 minutes, it gets suspended. That is the configuration of that virtual warehouse. If nobody issues any query on that using that particular warehouse, it sleeps. Whenever you issue a new query, it wakes up. But we have run a query one more time, but the data that we ran last time, this particular thing, it was cached already. So when the data gets cached, right, it doesn't use the virtual warehouse anymore. It uses Snowflake's virtual warehouse. You won't be charged for it. You're getting the data from the cache. That's why if you look at the size value here, it's null, and it got in 99 milliseconds. So this you are not charged for it. This is the only one you are charged for it. If you go to the worksheet and then say, I'll go and then see count star, count one from, and this is this much number of records, right? And if I go to the history part of it, if I refresh this, see the count is also not. So Snowflake maintains metadata statistics of each table, the count, min, max of each columns, and all this stuff. So when you do any of these operations, right, you are not charged for it. So we'll talk in detail when you get into the micro partitions, how data gets stored and all this stuff. I'll explain you in detail and what are the things that you will be charged and what are the things that you are not charged. If you do any DDL statements like create, truncate, drop, alter, these kind of commands also, you are not charged for it. Snowflake takes care of its own virtual warehouse. You won't get charged anything for it. If you go look at this, right, I'll just create a sample table, create table, test one, okay, ID number, and ESCR varchar of 100. So Yeah, our database is pointed to Snowflake, which we cannot. I'm going to change it to extra small and database to SFDB and schema to SF schema. This particular thing is called context sensitive menu, and you can have about 99 worksheets like this. One more, and if you want to save the name of it, right? For example, if you are doing for development for some exercise or dev 1 or something, you can name your worksheets like this, and you can open up to 100 of them. I never tried 100. They were initially it was 20 and then they increased to 100, and each of them can have different databases you can point to. Each worksheet you can point to different database, different warehouse, and different role. And the role is here is account admin. I can go and change the role to sysadmin. I can change. See, this is a medium, right? I can change it to extra small, and I can change it to any SFDB. You can do whatever. So each worksheet is independent of anything else. It's like you can connect to different databases, warehouses, roles, and then you can have your work done. Okay, and here I'm trying to create the table, right? Table test2 got created. If you go to the history part of it, and then if I refresh, right, the create table command, you're not charged anything for it. All DDLs you're not charged for your pricing. Okay, and this is pretty much about these areas. And then 1 second. Okay, yeah. So the other part of it, right? How do you do data loading? So from which cloud environments you can do data loading and all this stuff. So now you have the Snowflake account on AWS, right? You can have your own AWS account. You can have your own Azure account, GCP account in your corporate environment. And the company where which you are working, they can have the AWS accounts as well, right? And if you're storing data in AWS account, you can pull in the data from AWS accounts into Snowflake as well. Okay, so you can bring it from S3, you can bring it from GCP, you can bring it from Azure blobs. Even though you have implemented your Snowflake on AWS, you can still get data from blobs, Azure, and GCP as well, and vice versa. So because in a company you might have Azure account, you might have AWS account or GCP account, and then you can your data is lying in different places, right? If you want to get all the data into Snowflake for your analytical purposes, you can still, even though if your Snowflake is implemented on AWS, you can still talk to. They have given integrations for talking to Azure and GCP. I'll show you an example how that can be done. How to talk to S3, how to load data from S3, how to load data from Azure blobs. Okay, not from GCP. I don't have GCP connection. Okay, so Snowflake supports bulk loading and continuous data flow. So whenever you're trying to load data ingestion can be done bulk loading. You have 10 terabytes of data, you can load them, or you are going to get data every 10 minutes or every half an hour in a batch mode. You can keep on continuously loading the data into Snowflake. That is the batch mode. When we start the data ingestion session, right, I'll tell you how that can be done and all this stuff. And in the same way, Snowflake normally uses the terminology which is similar to the physical warehouse. Physical warehouse is like a go down, right, where you get your trucks and then you load the data, load your stuff into the trucks, you unload the and data from the trucks into your warehouse. So they use for importing, they use loading. For exporting, they use unloading. So you can unload means you can export the data from Snowflake to any of the file formats like JSON, CSV. You can export as well. Okay, and I have explained you about the region information, how the Snowflake naming convention happens, right? That is one thing. Okay, and these are the regions by which you can implement your Snowflake. Orange ones are AWS. These are all the orange points. They have one in back Mumbai as well. And GCP is little limited. So GCP was a late entry into Snowflake. The first one was AWS and second one was Azure. Okay, and then so let's talk in detail about the editions. What are these editions? Why do they charge more for these editions? And you want to know, you should have the knowledge of each edition. And then when you're trying to write a Snow Pro exam, right, they will try to ask you what is there in which edition, kind of thing. So where is this? Yeah. So let me go and then talk, right? So this is the standard edition. So standard edition, complete SQL data warehouse, secure data sharing across regions, clouds. That means when you're trying, you have already signed up for a standard edition. Which region did you pick? For example, let's take APAC Mumbai. But you want to, you have your AWS accounts in different parts of the world. That means your company is spread across the globe, and then you have North America, what do you call, AWS accounts. You have AWS accounts in APAC Mumbai. Your company has it. So whenever you're trying to export data to S3 buckets, S3 buckets means they're lying in your AWS account, right? From Snowflake, from your APAC Mumbai, you can export the data to APAC Mumbai S3 buckets, or you can export the data from Snowflake to North America S3 buckets. You can unload the data. You can load the data from different regions into Snowflake. So if your data is lying in different parts of the globe on the AWS accounts or Azure accounts or GCP accounts, you can bring in the data into Snowflake. So that is cross region. That's called cross regions. Okay. And data sharing is right. You can share your data. For example, data sharing is something like you have a table in your database, and you can share the data to anybody who has an account in any part of the world. They can look at the data. So if you look at this particular so worksheets, right, this particular Snowflake database, it's not in APAC Mumbai, that is in North America region, because wherever the Snowflake has created, they have created a share, and they have shared across all the trial accounts. Whomever signs up for a trial account, they will have the access to this particular database. But originally, where is this database lying? It's lying with Snowflake in the North America West Coast region, but still we are able to access this, right? This is called data sharing. And there is another chapter entirely for data sharing, and we are going to talk about it. And if you want to copy data between prod and stage, prod and dev, or dev to stage, whatever, we use this data sharing capability to share the data, and then you can make a copy of the production databases or schemas or tables or anything. Okay, guys, am I going too fast, or you guys are able to digest me whatever I am talking? Is it slow? I just need a feedback from you guys, please.
Sir, I have a question. Do we have to, do they bill when we share the data between the accounts?
If Snowflake shares us, we are not billed, but you share to somebody else, you can make whomever using, you can they can pay for you, or you will be billed for their activities as well. If you are trying to share to an account who to another Snowflake account, they will be charged for this. And if you are trying to share to an account who doesn't have an Snowflake account, for example, you have a company like stock brokerage company, right? You have agents all across the globe, and then they want to read your data, query your data, kind of thing, right? And then you can set up something so that whenever they query, you will be paying for it. So that is called data exchange. We'll talk in detail. So there's an entire chapter on it. If you look at this, right, data marketplace, this is an entire new thing that Snowflake has come up with. You can sell your data. If you have data in your there, right, you can go and sell your data based on this. I'll show you a sample of it. So if you look at it, these are all the data. If you are talking about health, right? Canadian outbreak, they have given the COVID-19 data of a Canadian outbreak, and you can request and you have to pay for it. And this works on the data sharing capabilities. Mobile data, quarterly financial statements of Snowflake, business, they have all. This is a stock exchange, data exchange. You can sell your data if you have something. This whole thing works on the data sharing capabilities. Okay, and coming back to our this thing, right? And you have support when you sign up, right? 24 into 365 support. So previously, couple of months back, there are about 5 editions: standard, premier, enterprise, business critical, VPS. Okay, so now they have consolidated, and you don't find VPS in Azure. The reason we went with AWS is, right, Azure doesn't support the VPS part of it. Okay, there are some security things that are much more in AWS rather than Azure. So most of the companies, if they think they want to have their data very much secure, right, they normally go with AWS because AWS provides a lot more security features than Azure. Okay, and then support. If you run into an issue, if you want to raise a ticket, then it's 24 into 365. You will have support for every day. So time travel. So this is another thing. So you can access, so for example, if you delete something in Windows, right, it goes into recycle bin, and then you can record the data from the recycle bin again, right? And the same way there is a recycle bin concept in Oracle as well. So you can recover your table if you drop something or something like that. In the same way, Snowflake has given a time travel. That means you can go back 24 hours, and then you can look at your query, look at your data. You can, if any table is dropped, you can undrop. There is a command called undrop, which recovers your database, sorry, table. Or if your database dropped, you can undrop the database. So that time travel is available for you in what do you call, uh, in standard edition, and that is only for one day. Okay, so it's encryption. All the data that you have sitting in that is sitting in Snowflake is encrypted. Guys, give me a minute, please. And you have customer dedicated virtual warehouses. So in this standard edition, right, you can have single cluster warehouse. You cannot have multi-cluster. Standard provides only one cluster. If you go register for standard, right, when you go and try to create a virtual warehouse, you won't see min and max. Okay, and federated authentication means single sign-on, multi-factor authentication. This all provided for standard. And database replication means if you want to replicate your data to different places, You can have database replication. That means you can replicate your data from one account to another account. You will be charged. So somebody is asking me how we can, the difference between big data and Snowflake. I'll explain you at the end of the class. You just ask me at the end of the class so that I can explain you in different in a detailed manner. Okay, hold on your thought. I'll explain that. And then external functions. So now because of this AWS, because Snowflake is also sitting on the cloud, right? Each of the cloud provider have another thing called the lambda functions, right? Serverless. You don't need to install any of the software for you, but you can still write your code in any of the Python or Java or .NET or any native development, and then you can call them. So the cloud provider goes and executes that code in that particular software. Sorry guys. So in that particular using that particular server, and executes and gets the data. For example, if you are trying to do some Python analysis on the data set, right, on a table, you can pass in the data of the table, and then Snowflake goes and executes the Python. You can call external function, you can call a Python function, you can call a Java function, and then you pass the data to that particular function. It goes and executes in that particular Java environment or Python environment, and then gets you the data back. Snowflakes doesn't have the Python in it, but you can still use those particular functions to execute your data, or you already have written that function somewhere for in your cloud environment, and you want to make use of it, right? You can still call it. That is called external functions. A snow site is something like a dashboard. If you want to build dashboards on top of it, right, you can use Snowsite for building the dashboards, and you can create your own data exchange. So we have seen data. This is called data marketplace. This is one is called data marketplace, and data exchange is something like um, I was your own company and your own people, and the people that they're trying to access might not be a registered Snowflake account user, but still you want to share your data. That is what is called data exchange. So I'll tell you how the data exchange happens when we talk about the data sharing part of it. Okay, and data marketplace access we do. So we were able to open this, right? This also is there. So these are all the capabilities of the standard edition. And then if you go to the business enterprise edition, right? So my company, the development stage are on enterprise edition, and then the production is on business critical edition. The development QA is on enterprise. Okay, so it has all the features of the standard edition plus multi-cluster warehouse. I have shown you, right? The standard, it has only one single cluster. You can scale up, scale down. That means you can go to from extra small to small, medium, large, and you can scale down the same way. In multi-cluster, you will have max clusters up to 10, and you can scale up, scale down, and do all kinds of stuff. Okay, and the time travel is for 90 days. That means you can set up the time travel for a particular table, and if you set it up for 90 days, you can travel back 90 days and get your data, recover your things. What you can do, all so you will have the backup of 90 days with you just for querying purposes. Okay, but if you choose this time travel for 90 days, you have to pay more for your storage charges. So for example, if you have the data in your table is 1 terabyte, and if you take 30 days of time travel, right, then 30 into 30 terabytes, and you have to pay 30 terabytes plus there is another 7-day period as a backup period which is called fail safe. We'll talk in detail about that, but so 30 plus 7 you have to pay for. Your average balance becomes 37 terabytes. 37 terabytes multiplied by 23 is your storage billing. Okay, and then annual rekeying of all encrypted data. So the data that is sitting in Snowflake is all encrypted. They have 4 levels of encryption, and there is a separate session on encryption and how that happens, right? We'll explain you that particular things. So so it has, and if you think that you want to change the encryption every year, so you have encryption with one particular key, right? And you can go and change your encryption every year. That is called annual rekeying of encrypted data. And you can create materialized views, and there is a new thing called search optimization service. If your tables are very huge, and then you want to set up the performance on your tables for the queries, this is like in SEO, like when you are trying to query Google, right? Google uses SEO for automation, and based on the ranking, it gets you the ranking and all this stuff. Snowflake also works in the same way. The search optimization service, that's called SEO. And you have dynamic data masking. Dynamic data masking is something like, guys, and we are going to learn about each and every capability that we are talking here. So we'll see how to set up the time travel, we'll see how to set up the multi-cluster, and we'll talk about encryptions, and we'll talk about federated authentications. I'll show you how to call an external functions, whatever all the stuff that you have in standard and enterprise, right? We're gonna talk about each and every topic that is mentioned here. Okay, so dynamic data masking is something like, you have a social security number and you don't want to expose the number, or you have some mobile numbers or email IDs which you don't want to expose to anybody, then you can mask them. That is called dynamic data masking. On the fly you can mask, you can create a masking policy, and then you can apply that masking policy to the columns and the table, and they get masked automatically. And we're going to learn this as well part of the program. Okay, external data tokenization, how this is something similar to external functions. It's collection data tokenization, so we're going to talk about this as well. Okay, these two things are mostly the capabilities of Snowflake. And the business critical is more of a compliance. So if you have HIPAA support, that means if your company is a medical record keeping company, and there are some HIPAA compliance. So this enterprise plus supports HIPAA compliances, PCI compliances, and encryption is anywhere, and try secret secure. That means if you don't trust Snowflake encryption, you can create your own, you can have your own key, and Snowflake mixes its own key with your key that's supplied by you, and then encrypts the data. So two level of encryptions, which makes much more complex for people to hack the data. That is called try secret secure. Okay, and you can have AWS private link support. This is the reason we went with the, for our production, we wanted to have AWS private link for the data that is sitting in AWS. When we are trying to coordinate between our data that is sitting in AWS S3 buckets, right, which had the private link, and when we want to talk between each of them, right, you should have the private link support. That's where we went with AWS business critical for production. And database failover and failback for business continuity. That means if the any of the regions, so normally what happens, as a failover disaster management thing, Snowflake stores your data in 3 different places. In the same region, it will have data like a big data. It will have 3 different nodes, and if any of one particular node goes down, right, it goes and talks to the other 2 nodes. So you have the data that you're storing in your table. That means the data is, it's placed in 3 different places. So the percent chances of losing your data is very, very minimal. Okay, and that depends upon the AWS S3 buckets, because you store the data in S3, and when you store the data in S3, right, you have the capabilities of storing it in 3 different places, and if one goes down, you can read from the other. So Snowflake utilizes that AWS capability to store, and it stores your data in 3 places. What if the complete region goes down? What if the North America AWS region went down? with some issue, then this failback means you can set up your account in such a way that whenever you do any, it's like a Oracle replication, right? So you have your data account in North America region, and at the same time whenever the transactions happen, right, or when you do anything, data ingestion happens, you can set up a failover. That means you can choose any APAC or Europe region account as the failback, and then it keeps on replicating the data to the other account. If the North America region goes down, automatically the Europe region comes into the picture. This becomes the North America region, which is a primary one, and the Europe region is which is secondary one. If North America goes down, Europe region becomes the primary. All your transactions, people, connections, everything goes points to the what do you call the Europe region, and that becomes primary. And whenever the North America comes up, right, it again syncs back and it syncs back the data, everything, and makes the North America region as a primary one. So primary, secondary kind of thing for data replication failover. That's is available in business critical. Okay, and the other one is right, virtual private Snowflake. So this virtual private Snowflake is right. Normally what happens, this is normally who is into financials and non-banking financials, who thinks the data is much more precise, sensitive, they cannot, so they can sign up for virtual private Snowflake, and the pricing is about $6 or something per credit, and it has all the business critical options. Plus the only difference between these three and this one, right? So we talked about virtual warehouses. So virtual warehouses is a hardware, okay, and when you run your query, then only your hardware will work. So if you are not running, the hardware is idle. So what Snowflake does it, or AWS does internally is right, they share these resources across different clients. So I am coding something. I'm the moment whatever the available clusters, it was given to me and keeps on running. When it becomes suspended, right? If somebody calls that particular thing, the suspended warehouse will be given it to some other client. So there are a lot many clients using the Snowflake, right? So they utilize the hardware in a very optimized way. So the hardware or the cluster gets shared between different accounts. I'm querying from XYZ company, somebody is querying from Sony, somebody is querying from Cisco, somebody is querying from a NetApp. So they share these virtual warehouses. The hardware that is lying in their server farm in AWS, right? They utilize that particular thing. Okay. And if you sign up with virtual private Snowflake, you will have a dedicated clusters that will not be shared between. So when you're trying to share between things, right, you can still get into one hack and all this stuff. So those virtual warehouses for VPS, they are not shared across. You will have a dedicated virtual warehouse for the company, and the metadata layer that's also is shared across in the Snowflake. For VPS guys, they have a separate Snowflake database. Only those particular VPS account, each account will have a separate database, and metadata statistics is also not shared across things. So that's what the virtual private Snowflake is. Okay,
Shekhar,
clear
can you
enough?
talk dynamic data masking?
So dynamic data masking is something like when you're trying to query a particular table and you have a particular column like social security number in it, it gets dynamically masked. Whenever you query that particular column, you would have created a policy on it, applied the policy on that particular column. Whenever somebody queries that particular column, it automatically masks the data.
How we will mask any coding we are going to implement?
I'll tell you. When we talk about the security session, I'll tell you how to set up the policy, how do you apply the masking, how does it. So we used to, there was a workaround before data masking, we used to create a view on top of the table. And if somebody queries, right? So we mask the data. We'll be giving the access to the view rather than to the table.
Okay.
So that they have implemented in a masking way in Snowflake itself.
Okay.
You don't need to create a view and all this stuff. Okay.
Okay.
That is pretty much about. So we are going to talk about all the things that we are highlighted here, right? All the capabilities of we are going to talk in each and so they are organized into different chapters, and we'll talk about them.
In trial version, which one you recommended us to install to do the practice?
Enterprise or business critical.
Okay.
So Power BI versus ClickSense versus ServiceNow versus Snowflake versus, man, Vishnu Teja, you asked me the entire world, man. Okay, so uh, those are all completely different. I will so that is we'll talk. Hold on, you guys. I'll explain you. Okay, and then so we talked about all of them, and there are the difference between this SQL compatibilities. So this is the old slide deck which I prepared, and you see Premier as well here. So now they combined standard and Premier together, and then they have enterprise and the business critical. They used to call it as enterprise sensitive data. ESD means enterprise sensitive data. Now they are calling it as business critical. I did not update this, but this capabilities are same in the VPS. So most of them, so standard and then enterprise ESD, all of them have similar things. You can, this is not much of a use, but I just wanted to have the HIPAA regulations, PCI, whatever that I explained to you, right? I have this is in the tabular form kind of thing. Okay, and then how does the Snowflake release their patches? Okay, so we have learned that Snowflake keeps your data in 3 different places in the same region. So whenever every week the release happens every week. So if you go to this particular, I haven't told you how to create the control key. Sorry. So this is the Snowflake. SnowSQL is a client, and that is the command line interface, and you can use this to work upon. And first half of the training I'll be using SnowSQL to write my queries and everything. Reason I want you to get familiarized with this NoSQL part of it as well, because whatever you do in NoSQL, you can do the same thing the worksheet as well. Both of them similar. You can do any of them. There are only 2 commands that you cannot do from worksheet, which you can do from NoSQL. I'll explain you, and I'll guide you how to install this NoSQL as well. But for now, you hold on your thought. So if I go and say select current version, this is my current version 4.4.0, and the next week you'll have a different version 442, 443. Every week they will have a different version. So version is not a prominent in Snowflake. If you talk about Oracle, then they talk about which version of Oracle you worked on, 19c, 16c, 12c, and all this stuff. Here that is not the case. Okay, and they release versions every week, and in release types, right, they have new releases, patch releases, that means bug fixes, or if there are any new enhancements, then you can have that. The dynamic data masking was so what normally they do, right, they have a preview release as well. And if you're interested, you can sign up for the preview release, so that if there is a new capability, right, they'll make it available in your production environment as well if you sign up with them for the preview, and you can make use of that, the beta edition kind of thing. Okay, so when they're trying to do it in releases, right, you don't need to downgrade your system or down your system. Nothing is, they'll have this patching and fixing new environment on their particular thing is applied to each and every account automatically. Okay, so I'll tell you how that will happen, but for now, hold on. Users experience no downtime or disruption of service. The deployments happen transparently in the background. You don't need to do, and it happens every week. with new features and fixes. Okay. Once a new release has been deployed, Snowflake does not move all the accounts to the release at the same time. For example, all the accounts means based on the edition you will have. So first they are going to do it for enterprise editions, then they'll do it for standard and business critical ones, then they do it for VPS accounts. Something like day one they'll do it on the day of the week. For example, if you think I think they do it on Wednesdays or something. I'm not sure about that. So so the first one is right. They do it for enterprise accounts on day one, and the next day they'll do it for standard editions, and the next day they'll do it for enterprise edition, and then VPS accounts, and this should be business critical edition and VPS accounts. So they do this in a 3-stage approach over 2 days. The reason I'm telling you is that these questions are part of the SnowPro examination. If you're trying to write a SnowPro examination, right, you have to have this in your mind. The stage approach only applies to new releases. If they're trying to release, patching is a different activity. When they are trying to release new capabilities, they go in this 2-day format, and then they apply on 2 days to the other enterprise, and then business critical, and then the standard editions. For patch releases, they can move it on the same day, any day. All accounts are moved to the patch release on the same day. If it's a bug fix, then they do bug fixing on one single day for all the all the accounts, all the different editions of the accounts. But for new releases, they move in a staggered way. Day one something, day two something kind of thing. And you know how they do this? Your data is sitting in 3 places, right? That means you have three nodes. They first apply the patch on one node, and they switch the node. You have 3 nodes, and they have, so when they are applying the patch, right, they make sure that the data that you're running is on one particular node, and they still have 2 nodes available for them, right? They know, they maintain all this stuff. So they first apply the patch on the first node which is not being used, second node which is not being used, and then they swap. They point you to the node which has been done, and this happens in the background. So they did not disclose how it happens, but I know for sure this is how it happens. Okay. And then, so how do you connect to Snowflake? Okay, that's pretty much, yeah. So if you look at this part, right, I have connected to the Snowflake. Where is my stuff? So worksheets, yeah. So you will get an URL, you can log into the URL, and then this is called a menu ribbon, and this is the home button. Wherever you are, for example, you are in history page, right? If you click the Snowflake icon, it will bring you to the worksheet, and you have databases where you see all the databases, and if you click on any database, right, as DBMS, and you can create schemas, and these are schemas, views, stages, file format, sequences, pipes. We'll talk about each of them, and you can come. This is called a breadcrumb trail. If you click on the schema, right, it will show you. This is called breadcrumb trail. Keep on navigation path basically, and you can go on to the shares. And if you are into account admin, super user kind of thing, you will see the shares. Normally, when you log into a different role, right? Let's say sysadmin, or sysadmin is the one that we'll be working upon. But in the real-time environment, you will have a different role for you: ETL role, or analyst role, or reporting role, or program manager role. You have different roles, and you'll be logging with. You won't be having the access to any of the default roles that you see here. Okay. These are so these are the core roles. You won't have access to any of these roles. Okay. And when you go to the account, then only you'll see an account tab here. Account admin role, you will have the account tab here, which is like, you will see the usage, what are the warehouses that you have, and if you click, so it shows you per warehouse how much is the per day usage, total average data that is stored, total credits consumed of the all warehouses that you have used upon. This is for the usage. Billing, if you have signed up with any credit card or bank account details, that shows up here. For trial account users, you don't have anything here. And for users, it shows you what are all the users that you have created and what are the roles that you have created here, and then what are the policies like network policies and all the stuff that you have created, and what are the sessions that are being run so far now. These are all the sessions. Okay, and these two we'll talk in later. And I have shown you the data marketplace and the warehouses. What are the warehouses? If you want to change the warehouse, so all of them are suspended. If I go and give a query, right now I'm compute WH, right? So I'll say select star from EMP. EMP does not exist. Or select star from, let me see, limit 100. I got the 3.25 seconds. And if you go to the warehouses, right, where is compute WH started? Can you see it was suspended before? The moment I issued a query, it wakes up that particular warehouse, and then it starts a warehouse. And if there is no activity, right, if I go and then click edit on this, sometimes it doesn't work. Yeah, configure, right? If you go and click configure, is nothing but edit. So after 10 minutes, it automatically shuts down. I can go and change it to 5 minutes as well. You can set it to 1 minute as well, but less than 5 minutes you have to use your worksheet, alter warehouse or SnowSQL, and then execute your query. So it will wait for, if there is no activity for 5 minutes, then it will suspend. You will see the suspended action. Okay, and we have seen these worksheets. You can connect to this, is called context sensitive menu, and you can go and change whatever you want. So if you want to load scripts, you can load, turn on the code highlight. You can highlight the code. This is another hide run confirmation. That means the moment you run, it can hide the confirmations. If you want to delete something, you can delete. And this is the role, this is the warehouse, this is the database, this is the schema. You can go and change any of them at any of this type. If you say resize, right, you can choose any of them. Compute WH small, the same thing got resized. That means you have altered and changed the size of the particular warehouse. If you go and see the warehouses, right, you won't see small here. This becomes, sorry, extra small. On the fly you can resize. Even if the queries are running on it, you can still resize it. Okay, you can go and then click on it and resize. I can make it extra small again. So you have the capability. So even though if you're running queries on it, you can resize, you can scale up, you can make it bigger. So, or you can scale down, you can make it smaller. Okay, and the account admin, only when you click on account admin, security admin, you'll see this account tab. Okay, and then this is the preview apps. If there are new capabilities, right, it shows in the preview apps like dashboards. We saw it as snow sites, right, and data exchange. These are the previews still, and then they'll show you in this preview app. Okay, and partner connect is the one which they have signed up with many partners, and this thing, Fivetran, Talent, Sigma. So these two for data ingestion. So they have different partners for different things, right? Like data ingestion, data transformation, data visualization, and data modeling. So they have many things that they have signed up. Metallion is one of the one for data ingestion. Talent is data ingestion. 5tran is for data ingestion, and then they have something for data modeling. So one second. So this is data ops with CI/CD. If you are trying to check in the code and then trying to deploy using Jenkins or something, if you want to migrate the code between different accounts, different from dev to stage to prod, you can use one of these tools. So they have tied up with many industry partners, so that you don't need to go and then launch it again from here itself. You can go and then launch this and then do data ingestion and everything. And these are all also on the cloud, and the pricing also is like pay as you go model kind of thing. And this is the help. In the help, you can go and download all the stuff. We'll talk this in the next thing. So for now, and if you have any notifications that comes here kind of thing, so and this is the username, and this is the role in which you have logged in upon kind of thing. Okay, that is pretty much about the, and this particular thing you is called the web UI, web user interface. The moment you log in, you are logging into the web UI, and these are all the stuff that you will be working on. You'll be having the worksheets, you can write your queries, procedures, and all this stuff, and you can choose your databases, you can create your tables and all this stuff. And this particular thing is called the web UI. And the command line interface is called the Snowsql. Name of the tool is called Snowsql. And then we'll talk about how to install to Snowsql and everything in the next class. Okay, so any questions for me? Okay, to answer the questions, Gopal, big data runs on the file system. Big data is an ecosystem. You have HDFS, you have Hive, mm, you have other Spark, other tools to read the HDFS. That is an ecosystem. That is not a database as such. Hive is kind of a database. It's not a pure database. It runs on the HDFS to get you the data and all this stuff. This particular Snowflake is a pure database, like an Oracle. And in Hive or any of your big data environments, right, you can still do the delete part comfortably. Even update was came into picture very late. You can insert it, but in the DML activity, and then having the SCD types, maintaining the SCD types, tracking whatever has changed into your particular table, it's a very big task in the Hadoop environment. Here, that is not. It's a pure database, right? You can track everything. You can do all kinds of stuff. It's like a database built on the cloud. Okay, and you can still migrate your data which is having in Hadoop to Snowflake. And if you have the Hive tables in AWS Elastic EMR, right, you can automatically load data into Snowflake using external tables functions. There are a lot of them. So these two are two different things. Hadoop, you can do a lot of activity, but you should need different ecosystem. For example, if you want to process the data, you will be using Spark, or and then trying to run your code using processing engines, and then try to run your code. So that is also a platform, but it stores in a different way. Here it's a pure database. It's built for the cloud, and then this built for analytical purposes. And how you want to use like a regular database, you can use this. There in big data, you have to write, you have to code, you have to extract, you have to do all kinds of stuff. You need a lot of human resources with different talents, different capabilities, Spark, Kafka, different things, right, that work with that ecosystem. Okay, and somebody asked me about all of them. I think Varun, right? Let me look. So Power BI is a visual. See, you have. So tell me, what is the difference between SQL Server and Power BI? Vishnu, you have asked me a question, right? Power BI versus ClickSense versus ServiceNow versus Snowflake versus AWS versus Heroku. Can you Tell me the difference between SQL Server and all of them. Vishnu, are you there?
Yes, sir.
So, what is the difference between Power BI and SQL Server? Tell me one thing. I can make you understand the difference between all the other as well.
Yes, sir. Power BI is a dashboarding tool and we
Yeah.
can use for
So,
ETL also.
yeah, you can use for
And we
ETL.
can copy that SQL after transforming all that
Yes, that means that is a
handedly.
tool. Where is the
Sir,
data lying in? Where is the data?
yes, sir. Connectors, we can connect them. We can
Yeah.
extract transform loads.
Yes. That means your data source is somewhere. Your data source might be
100
Oracle
plus,
or
100 plus databases we can connect with Power BI.
yeah. So Snowflake is a database. Power BI is a dashboard tool or ETL tool. You can connect to Snowflake and build your dashboards. Snowflake is a
So,
data source for Power BI. How you are connecting to SQL Server or Oracle from Power BI? The same way you have connectors to connect to Snowflake.
so
Got
why
it?
should I go for the Snowflake instead of Power BI?
Where are you storing your data? So you have an e-commerce application and you want to run your reports. You want to store the historical data. Where do you store the historical data?
Historical data we store in with any Google Cloud or any
Google,
AWS, Blob or
AWS. Yeah, that means you are putting in S3 buckets. And so how do you read them? If you put it in blob storage, right? How do you read them? So to answer that, right? This particular thing is Snowflake is a database, pure database like an Oracle. You can store your data. So if you're storing your data in the AWS and then S3 buckets, then that's fine. But you have to use another tool like Athena or Glue to read that and then process your stuff and all this stuff. But how do you make transactions? How do you do inserts, updates, and delete? That is still a challenge for you. You have to have another tool to handle that. Snowflake is a database like Oracle. You go insert, update, delete. SQL Server insert, update, delete. This is an analytical platform for all your data. You bring in your data from different sources and then you keep it here, and then on top of it you do your analysis. Okay, so that's what it is. The things that you are asking me, right? Comparison, all have a different capability. They are not databases. Only Snowflake is a database, and the other tools that you have mentioned, they work for different capabilities. You can build dashboards, you can do ETLs, you can do different kind of capabilities. But Snowflake is a database. Okay. Why do you want to go? That's a different thing. If you can handle petabytes of data in S3 buckets and do DML activity and then try to run your reports, try to then build your dashboards on the AWS, it's up to you. You don't need to go there. With the ease of use, where you can have your data, bring in your data to Snowflake and then do any DML activities on Snowflake with much more easier, maintain your data, have the slowly changing dimensions captured in a different way, petabytes of data, querying like a regular Oracle database. And then if you want to export to S3 buckets, or if you have data on S3 buckets, blob storage, you can get them into Snowflake for analytical purposes. This is a database that helps you to do all kinds of stuff. Okay, it simplifies your life or simplifies a particular company's life to store the data in a easy manner with an expensive non-expensive ways. When you compare with the on-premise stuff, you don't need to maintain do a tuning, you don't need to patching, you don't need to shut down the database for upgradation, anything. It's just a pure database. It makes your life much more simpler. That's what the Snowflake is about. Okay. So I think we'll wrap up the class. If you have questions, I can answer, or we can connect tomorrow.
Sir, ClickSense versus ServiceNow, sir.
So what is ClickSense? ServiceNow is basically you're trying to track your incident management, right? So you track your incidents, and if somebody raises a ticket and you have the workflow of the ticket, you will set up the workflow he has to done, and you have the updates on that. That is what the ServiceNow. ClickSense is much more. I forgot what to. Where did I use
So
the ClickSense?
dashboards, we are going to create
So
dashboards.
yeah. So apart from
Visualization.
dashboards, we
Visualization.
had visualization. Yeah, so that's what I was thinking of. So that is a visualization. So each of them you're trying to compare apples and oranges. So visualization tool versus instant tracking tool, and then the dashboard doing tool, and then ETL, and then Snowflake. These are all apples and oranges, and some other fruits. Snowflake is a database, pure database and Oracle. If you can compare SQL Server with any of them, then you can understand the comparison between Snowflake with any of them, or Oracle with any of them, something similar to Snowflake. Okay.
Sir, are we discussing about migration also in Snowflake?
Yeah, I'll tell you how to set up the data pipeline. I'll tell you, I don't have the environment to show you exactly, but I'll tell you, simulate and tell you, think that this is an Oracle, how data comes in, and I'll tell you how to set up a data lake environment in Snowflake, and then how do you, so there is a data pipeline session in Snowflake. So when I talk about the data pipelines inside Snowflake, I'll tell you how to migrate the data, how the migration happens, what are the challenges in the migration, how do you set up data lake environments in Snowflake. All this stuff will have a detailed, elaborated discussion on it.
Okay, sir. Sir, we have classes every day, starting from today?
Yes, not on Monday, but every day I think. So we are contemplating to have 2 days break or 1 day break, that kind of thing. So there won't be class on Monday, but there will be a class tomorrow.
Okay. Same time, sir?
Same time, 7 o'clock, please.
Okay.
We'll have class weekdays also, right?
Yes, weekdays also, yes. Not on Mondays, but the other days, that we'll confirm.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, guys, then we'll catch up tomorrow.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. Thank you.